There is no out of here. You've been killed. Don't you remember?
People like getting scared because it releases an adrenaline rush, as well as producing dopamine. As you get older, it also becomes more and more hard to find things that would truly scare you, which is one of the reasons why the horror genre is so popular, specifically with movies. But also focusing on that idea, it gets harder and harder over time to find horror movies that actually scare you. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone watching, we'll be looking at the scariest horror movies. Hopefully these picks are actually scary to you guys, but I have to let you know right off the bat that horror is extremely subjective. Now, I might be preaching to the choir, but that choir might be full of testosterone-ridden people who are so tough that they have hair on their toes. Regardless, I'm gonna do my best to suggest some actually scary horror movies. And for my picks, I'm gonna give you justifications and reasons on why I actually think they're scary. Alright, with all that mansplaining out of the way, and if you don't know what mansplaining is, it's when a man over-explains something. Let's get into it.
감독님 손으로다가 목을 졸라서는 저 꼬맹이를 죽이는 겨.
Three Extremes. Three Extremes is a 2004 Asian cross-culture compilation of 3 horror films. There's Dumplings, directed by Fruit Chan of Hong Kong, Cut, directed by Parker Chan-wook of Korea, and Box, directed by Takashi Miike of Japan. And my apologies for that American pronunciation. All 3 films are unrelenting with their differing types of cruelty. Now, letting you know now, I'm going to give you some content warnings on screen like this, because I'd rather not every time be like, hey, heads up, it's going to show something nasty. No, instead it will be right here as a little appetizer. Do you like how I said appetizer? Because right here, that's what's going to happen. I said appetizer because a lady eats her fucking baby. She eats it. Their first film, called Dumplings, directed by Fruit Chan, would later be turned into a full-length feature film. And I think rightfully so. I believe it's the strongest film out of all 3, as well as the scariest one. As throughout the film, it shows a lady, Aunt May, making dumplings. Renowned dumpling, not that Aunt May, trust me, not that one.
Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us.
And these dumplings are renowned, as supposedly they make you younger, because inside those dumplings is a secret formula that Aunt May has cooked up in her head. And in the back of her kitchen. You wanna know what that secret formula includes? Babies. As Aunt May tells a lady, Mrs. Lee, who's struggling with the fact that not only is she aging, and looking like she's aging, which that's not a dig, especially for Mrs. Lee, because she definitely should have just aged. But Mrs. Lee is also battling the fact that she can't even have a child. However, Aunt May lets Mrs. Lee know on a little secret that unborn babies are more potent during the 6 to 8 month period inside, the oven. Which I guess that's a pretty good metaphor when you're talking about eating babies. The movie shows some extremely grueling moments. Aunt May performs an abortion on a young girl, and we all know what happens to abortions, right? Well, if you didn't, it actually shows it. It shows Aunt May with, the fetus and some dumpling batter dough. And what makes it all the more haunting is Aunt May is just casually doing her job, like it's a normal Tuesday. The film is a great horror movie, incorporating many grave realities, like how boys are more wanted in China, or the themes of self-confidence with one's body, particularly when it comes to women, and how they see the world, as well as how the pressures from said world can start to weigh on a lady, leading to the climactic and horrible scene. It is a rough watch, and it doesn't let up on the gas pedal. And mind you, that's just the first short film. The next film is called Cut, directed by Park Chan-wook, and it follows a film director who comes home to a sadistic home intruder who has his wife all strung up and her fingers are glued down to a piano. Now, I have a lot of hobbies, and playing guitar is one of them. Not playing it well, but playing it is one of them. Now, if someone forced my fingers with super glue and taped it on a guitar, I wouldn't be too happy. And neither is Gio's wife, the filmmaker who came home to the home intruder. And what's even worse is the home intruder starts chopping off fingers. Gio is trapped in a room with a home invader and his wife. And throughout the movie, the scares come from the intruder's psychopathic switches, as one second he's just gonna be goofing off. And the next one, he'll grab an axe and just start swinging.
Ready? Action!
And what's even worse is the home intruder's motive, as he's upset with Gio because he's rich. And look, that's completely fair, especially today.
Elon Musk could become the world's first trillionaire.
But the thing is with Gio is he's actually a good man, and the home intruder says so. The reason the home intruder knows that is because he was an extra in many films that Gio directed. And the home invader's hope throughout this home invasion is to get Gio to do something bad, as he believes that the rich are all corrupted. The movie climaxes with the home intruder demanding Gio to either kill a bound kidnapped girl that the home invader just randomly snatched up while headed to Gio's home, or the intruder is going to have to kill his wife. It's a sadistic torture film, and the pain is not only physical and graphic, but also mentally demeaning and crude. And there is no happy ending in this movie. The final film is titled Box, directed by Takashi Miike, and it's much more abstract and horror-oriented, as it follows an author who used to perform at a circus when she was just a little wee lad, and she was a dancer. Now, I said earlier that I wouldn't give content warnings, but if you watch this movie, I need to let you know that there's a lot of hints and some scenes of so if you go into this movie, just heads up, and if you're not comfortable with that, this is the only film out of the 3 that include that. But said adult who sleeps with the little girl gets a little bit of a comeuppance. He gets slashed. The circus flashback is all to illustrate a traumatic event in our protagonist's life. That protagonist's name is Kyoko, and her little sister is the victim of the older man who was sleeping with her. And obviously that's not the only abuse that's going on there, but that's, I think, the best example of it. Yet throughout the flashback, as well as when Kyoko snaps back into reality, it shows the haunting and more supernatural side of the film. As not only do we see a ghostly girl following Kyoko, but we see that she is seemingly controlled by some voodoo magic at some point in her life, specifically after she tried to run away from the event from the circus. However, that scene is a bit trippy because as she's running away, she starts to age and age and age, showing the passage of time as well as setting up the mystery and the twist that is soon to come. But that flashback and weird scenes is all to show that Kyoko's little sister unfortunately died during this traumatic event, as Kyoko would try to fight back against the handler at the circus. And while she does slash him, it leads to Kyoko's sister getting trapped in a box. All of the circus tent catches on fire, and while Kyoko makes her escape, her sister who is trapped in the box never does. You staying with me? If not, that's perfectly fine. The movie is full of twists and sets up so many mysteries and questions, all while incorporating great horror and suspenseful scenes. And I think it's made a point in the movie to give you pieces of the puzzle very slowly until the climax of the twist. And I personally don't want to spoil the ending for you, but I will say that it is rough, as with most of the movies in this list. And once you get to the twist, some might be like, oh, it's just this? Screw that. And that's definitely fair, but I think it wraps the film in a nice bow and makes the puzzle fully complete, as well as encompassing how bleak the horror movie is. All 3 films in 3 extremes are graphic, sexual, and unrelenting with what it shows to the audience. And for those scenes, I consider 3 Extremes one of the scariest horror movies out there. Audition. Audition from 1999 is a fantastic atmospherical torture horror movie, directed by Takashi Miike, a returning director on this list. The movie's themes are focused around loneliness and grief, as it starts off with showing our protagonist, Shigeharu, standing over his wife who soon passes, with their son nearby. The film proceeds to jump into the future years later, showing the widower is obviously lonely, and begins to try to find a new wife through completely normal means. He and his friend, who is a film producer, began audition tapes for a film that doesn't exist. Rather, the auditions are for finding Shigeharu a new wife. Which, hey fellas, don't do that. But not only is it creepy, but you might meet someone like Asami Yamazaki, a very beautiful lady. What are you doing? Ugh. Yeah, so this horror film is a bit different from all the other torture horror films out there. As with this one, a man is the victim. Now you may be like, oh, I've seen movies where men are the victims before. Yeah, but it's usually women. And I'm going to include some movies that are like that. However, Audition, I think, scares me specifically because I am a big burly man, full of testosterone, and I can't control my emotions well. And I drink excessively. But I'm not just randomly rambling there. No, I say that because as a man, I feel like I can relate to this movie more so than maybe a lady. The reason I said that is because Shigeharu does some things that reflect some things that I used to do. Not the audition for finding a new lady, because that's weird. But one of the more memorable things that I saw that reflected my life was once Shigeharu finds Yamazaki, he debates on when he should call her. He doesn't want to call her too soon because that's going to be a bit, too much. But he doesn't want to call her too late because he doesn't want to seem uninterested. I know how that feels. Don't know how that feels, and I'd rather not. Besides me relating to Shigeharu a bit more because of how awkward he is, especially when it comes to the ladies, the torture scene in this movie, it's famous for a reason because of how disturbing and gross it is. How many of you guys have gone to acupuncture before? And besides the torture scene, there are some great shots of horror in this movie. One of my favorite horror film shots ever is when Shigeharu finally calls Yamazaki, and the camera switches to her, just sitting in her room, completely silent, staring at the phone. Get you a lady like that. Right, fellas? But that scene where Shigeharu finally calls her, that is like the tone switch in the movie, and it is great. The whole first act, she seems more shy and reserved. And then instantly you see, oh, she's calculated as hell and kind of spooky. Admittedly, the reason for it being on this list is because of the torture scene. I don't like needles. And quick little ramble, I hate when people are like, oh, you hate needles? You got tattoos. It's not the same needle. Tattoos are like boom, 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 and I get pretty colors out of it. With shots, they just go inside me, and then I can feel it pumping ooze in me. I think the scariest scene in this movie is when she goes into the eyelids with the needles. Oh, and she also like saws off his leg with a wire. And that's always fun. And to completely top off the torture scene, she is like so calm and calculated about everything until she starts sawing, and you see just like for the first time, just joy in her face. It's terrifying, and I think it might be scarier for men, and sure, I'll speak for myself, but no, I'm going to speak for all men, because I'm the champion and warrior for men. It can seem so easy just to jump into a relationship and be vulnerable to a person you don't fully know and you shouldn't be vulnerable with. Especially if you're like Shigeharu, who hasn't been in a relationship for years. Now, that statement can obviously be used for everyone, but in this movie, it specifically targets a man. And I love the way the film makes you conflicted over the man, because his actions are There's no doubt about it, so he's definitely not good. With that being said, there's reasons to have sympathy for him. Maybe not because of him as a person, because, again, why are you making auditions for a wife? But on the other hand, what gives him sympathy is he has a son who lost his mother and who needs someone like a father. And you also understand that Shigeharu is just hurt and just so lonely and overridden with grief. Obviously, that doesn't justify his weird actions, but you understand why he did it. Now, my ramble about how a man brain can relate to Audition is to note that gender does play a role in what people are scared of. Again, this might be mansplaining, and if it is, just skip over, but hey, some people don't know this. Life influences what we're scared of. Life experiences influence what we're scared of.
Scoutmaster Kevin?
As a man, I'm not that scared of other men walking by me because I've only been punched a couple of times, and every time I've deserved it. However, if you're a lady and you walk by a random man, that could be a lot more scary. Can you guess why? One of my friends told me about how she sees certain horror movies as scarier than what I see. And usually her picks were things that reflect real-life dangers to women. I think you get the point. Now this is all to introduce y'all to Wolf Creek, a movie that I think falls under the idea that it could be scarier to women than us, men. I say us like you're a dude. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. It's been a long year, dude. With that being said, I chose Wolf Creek specifically because I don't think it goes over the top with just being cruel to women. To the point where it's like the director being like, yeah, I need to see this happen. And on top of that, the torture in this movie, not just the physical, but the antagonist yelling at the poor victims, that was rough to watch. And finally, to give you a nice little whipped cream dollop, the movie's based on a real life event and a real life person. So that's all to say that real life things can be scarier to others. I like over explaining stuff and put
A redneck moron.
Wolf Creek. Wolf Creek is an extremely mean-spirited horror movie. Another horror movie that falls into the torture genre. However, I think it's one of the torture horror movies that is actually enjoyable, to some degree. Wolf Creek from 2005 follows a group of backpackers who get caught up in the outback with an extremely devious fella, Mick Taylor. And devious seems a bit soft.
That's not a knife. This is a knife.
Mick Taylor is a very imposing yet charismatic man, who when he shows his true colors, is intensely rough. And a highlight from this movie, directed by Greg McLean, is the characters, which is important, especially in this movie. I mean, the first whole act of the movie is making sure the audience gives a shit about the characters. because they're gonna die horribly. And you're supposed to feel something when we go to movies. Nicole Kidman told us so.
We come to AMC theaters to laugh, to cry, to care.
I hate that ad so much. The movie does a great job at building the backpackers' relationships and goals, and it is actually endearing, especially for a horror movie. So many of these characters that are just considered cattle are so forgettable. Not in Wolf Creek though. And that helps for when the film is finally crashed by Mick Taylor, played by John Jarrett, and the scene where we truly begin to unveil who Mick is. There's no gore, there's no kills, just straight tension and intensity from Mick.
Take a pit bull's head clean off one time, yes. Your little leg's still pumping away.
And then once everyone goes to bed, the next scene just hurls you into the torture that not only the characters, but you also have to endure. And what makes the movie so scary is how sadistic Mick is. You saw the content warning of sex. At least I hope you did. If you're blind, my bad. Now that doesn't get explicitly shown, but it doesn't need to in this movie. It is rough. And Mick's treatment towards his victims, besides like actual violence, because again, this is a torture movie, so cruel how he talks to these people, especially the women. And his cruelty doesn't just stop at the characters that we watch throughout the movie. No, Mick has a whole collection of videotapes of all of his past victims that he keeps as mementos. Some are families with children, all who he has captured in the outback and murdered. After torture, of course. But when it comes to the kills and gore, Mick fucking paralyzes a girl.
Once your spine's severed, right?
And all while he's doing that, he says jackass quotes like, "This is a knife."
Head on a stick?
Fuck you! I mentioned it earlier, but Mick in Wolf Creek is based on a real-life serial killer and story in Australia. Ivan Milat, an Australian serial killer, also known as the Backpack Murderer. He would kill 7 of his victims the exact same way Mick paralyzed that one girl and eventually killed. And a lot of the times, horror movies that are just like inspired by true events, they're, you know, bullshit. It's like this. You see how Michael's face right now? Look at that. That's a ghost. Give me 3 Conjuring movies and we can say it's inspired by real events.
I'm so scared right now.
With Wolf Creek, obviously it's a movie, so it takes many differing routes. But with the cruelty and torture, it is solely based on Ivan. Besides outside influence that makes the horror movie scarier, there's a scene in Wolf Creek that makes me a little shaken whenever I see it in any horror movie. And that's when Mick is just sniping people from an undiscovered place, which has also happened in real life.
A week ago tonight, the shooting spree began, and 7 days later, the callous killer may have claimed his 9th victim.
The idea just scares the hell out of me. Just someone shooting indiscriminately with a sniper. Wolf Creek is unending with its barbarism, and the actors portrayed constant fear so well that it paints off on the audience. But luckily it ends on a happy note. Kind of. Not everyone dies. And the final nail in the coffin for its reason on this list is just how cruel Mick is when talking to his victims. He talks down to them like they're animals. Not even animals, as if they're dust on his boots that he needs to get off. Which, yeah, shocker, a serial killer's an asshole. Whoop-de-doo. If you think Wolf Creek falls into the catalog of scariest horror movies, then let me know. And if you disagree, then let me know why.
But I gotta go. I have a date with a 6-year-old boy.
What are you doing? Making a mistake. Making a...
Child's Play. Hear me out before you start commenting. Is Chucky a scary guy? No.
Fuck you.
Are we adults? Yeah, I'd hope so. If you're not, why are you watching me? Hear me out. I'm not scared of Child's Play. I'm not scared of Chucky. I know you aren't either. But Chucky was the one guy who absolutely terrified me when I was younger. When I was just a little lad, I surpassed YouTube's age verification back in like 1987. I'm not scared of Chucky, okay? I'm not. I'm a big guy. I'm a big boy. I'm not scared of Chucky.
Papa gets real scary when he yells.
But the reason I was so scared of Chucky as a child is because I always thought that my mom and dad could protect me from the bigger guys. Like if Jason starts coming after me, I think someone would notice. There's just a fat little doughboy running away from a 7-foot behemoth of a man with a hockey mask. With Ghostface, he'll probably just trip over something and not get me. With Freddy Krueger, I pretty much summed up that if he got me, I'm dead, so it's like whatever. And Michael Myers, I always thought I could outrun. But with Chucky, I think he could have gone past my mom and dad. I think he could have like gone under my bed and then done things to me. We'll move on, but I'd love to hear if there's any characters that were terrifying to you as a child, but nowadays you can see them and be like, man, what the hell was I scared of? A Serbian film. Do you like that 180 in examples? Chucky, Serbian film. Scariest horror movies. Subscribe, like, all the other shit. Now, right off the bat, I want to acknowledge that a Serbian film is not so much scary, but much more disturbing. And I want to give you my reason right off the bat on why I think Serbian film should count as one of the scariest horror movies ever. A lot of my friends who don't watch horror always ask me things like, what actually scares you? And one of the questions that comes with that is, what horror movie will you never watch again? I always say a Serbian film. Not always. I have to read the vibe of the room, because you can't just say that in like a group hangout with like specifically ladies, but really you probably shouldn't talk about a Serbian film at all, because it's When it comes to disturbing films in general, it's definitely not up there and most disturbing. Yeah, I think it's one of the most mainstream disturbing horror. Disturbing. It's much more mainstream than something like Slaughtered Vomit Dolls. A quick synopsis of a Serbian film. It follows an old porn star fella who signs up for what he believes is an art sex porno, and it could pay him enough to where he could finally get out of the porn industry. But what he actually signed up for is to be a part of a sadistic, and necrophilic snuff films actually, as in multiple. And you see it all. Eventually the plot becomes second nature of the shocking material that the movie just wants to illustrate to you. Which is the reason for it being on this list, as well as what I'll mention, because this movie feels like it doesn't give a shit about the story at all. It is just and more. Now, you probably can already tell, but if you fall into the small minority that actually enjoy a Serbian film, this ain't a safe space for you.
Get out! Get out! Get out!
So let's get into some of the shocking scenes. We watch a woman get lacerated and finally beheaded, all while brutally getting, or the man who gets his eyeball hole, or when a guy gets from a lady and then he cuts off her head, or just the straight up money shot that was shown. There's no like gore in that part, just a straight. This movie is literally just at times. Yeah, it's in the plot, but that's not like there should be a story here. But back to the violence that's so cool and edgy. There's another scene where a lady is bound. There's implied bestiality with a donkey. A man gets so that shows you the gender equality that's going on in this lovely movie. And there's a scene, you know what, you guys get it, right? No, you don't. All of those scenes that I talked about is nothing compared to what made this movie so infamous. And we're going back to babies. Do you have any idea where this could be headed? There's a scene in this movie where a lady gives birth to a newborn. That newborn then proceeds to. But what does the Serbian film mean? Does anyone give a Well, if you do, it's an allegorical attack on the of Serbian artists' minds by the cinematic fascist of political correctness. At least that's what the director says. Srdican Spasovic. Now, anyone who knows me or have watched this channel before, you might have gotten hints of it. I'm hardcore supportive of artists, and my thoughts on fascism could get me in trouble in the current day that I'm in America.
Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
No. Let's be clear about what the president is responding to, because many in this room want to talk about the president.
God bless Israel. With all that being said, see, this movie got me riled. I just think this movie is a huge fetishization for the director who just wants to see of women, of men, of children. And I could agree with someone's message through and through, but if the execution is something like this, you lose me. As not only a supporter of your message, which artists being censored and bullied by higher powers, yeah, that happens. But if you just show a bunch of I think there's a better way of illustrating this message. Not even I think, there are better ways of illustrating that. And don't get me wrong, I do see the allegory in the movie. I understand where the director's coming from, kind of. But it doesn't feel like some brave message or allegory. No, it feels like some edgelord's wet dream. The movie only exists to shock and offend you, while having a political message that a lot of people can't get behind on the back burner that's not even like in the shot. You see a stove in here? No, you don't. Same way you didn't see it in the Serbian film. Did that metaphor make sense? If it didn't, it's a lot like a Serbian film, just without all the And I think what makes me more upset about this movie in general, obviously all the but because of that message on the back burner, people who actually like this film can point to it and be like, oh, see, it's actually, you have to be smarter than that. You wouldn't get it. Rick and Morty requires a certain level of IQ to get. It's like that, but with a movie about like, oh, it's actually a metaphor about how fascism ruins Pepsi. You. Big old ball of Yeah, I didn't like this movie. And I think the only reason it made me scared is because it just was a reminder that, like, human trafficking and and things like this do happen. With that being said, yeah, I wouldn't recommend this movie. I'm done using the beeping sound. I just wanted to illustrate the point of that movie. It's just to shock you. Funny enough, there was like 10 minutes of the Serbian film that was cut out because it was too extensive. Too extensive from what I already told you. It showed that baby scene. It showed it. Please don't fulfill your morbid curiosity, because I feel like you might fall into the same boat where you're like, why did the director make this? And speaking of why did the director make this, let's talk about something that I don't personally think are horror films, but some people might. Snuff films. I'm simply mentioning snuff films because I can just tell that someone's gonna be like, you wanna know something actually scary? What about something light, like Hannibal Holocaust, where they murder real life animals? Like multiple, like 7. Oh, that's not enough for you? How about real life murder? Like Faces of Death, that much like a Serbian film had a plot on the back burner, but what it wanted to show you was real life footage of deaths of animals, people, murder scenes, accidents, gore on gore on gore. If you don't get what snuff films are yet, they're just real life recordings of real murders. And sometimes what leads up to those murders is just torture and all the bad things that another human being or a group of human beings can do to another. Those are snuff films. A lot of the time snuff films are actually for profit, and those technically aren't real snuff films, although they definitely are snuff films. Bear with me now. Snuff films are categorized as films that aren't meant for profit. They're simply recordings of real life murders, tortures, all that jazz. But many films like Cannibal Holocaust are for-profit snuff films. Cannibal Holocaust is a weird example because they did kill real-life animals, which is a problem, but they didn't kill any human beings.
In this accident, a woman was riding her bicycle when she was hit by a semi-truck. Crushed by its heavy wheels, her body became unidentifiable.
I felt the need to mention it when we're talking about actually scary things, because I personally think that watching a real-life person die, especially in brutal, homicidal ways, that's pretty terrifying. Here come the edgelords. Alright, that's enough about snuff films. If you think snuff films actually count as horror, then let me know. And I'm talking about like actual snuff films, not the for-profit snuff films. And that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone watching, were some of my picks for some of the scariest horror movies out there. I don't know if you can tell, but I think torture is pretty damn scary. Same with things regarding kids, especially babies. One more mention of it, but horror is so subjective. You might be scared of Scream.
I've been roaming around, always looking down at all I see.
I might be scared of my second grade teacher. I'm in my mid-20s, or early mid-20s. I don't know, I'm getting old. The wrinkles are coming. If you enjoyed my picks or any of my rambling, then leaving a like really helps me out. If you disagree or agree with any of them, or just have other picks that should have made this list, then let me know down below. And finally, if you think I earned it, then hit subscribe before you head out. Alright, bye.